What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mic Check Podcast. This is T Word, the People's Champ. Thank you for tapping in. Today, we're talking about Frank Martin and Artem Harutyunyan in their fight from Saturday, July 15th. But before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We sure appreciate that feedback. We're steadily growing. We need about 117 watch hours. So if you can, jump on the playlist, let that thing run. Check out some of that Spence Crawford content. We're keeping it coming on a daily basis. So be sure to look out for that and more. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to mostly keep it brief. On the Showtime card, this is the only fight we're going to react to. I didn't get to watch a lot of it because there was also a card going on the Zone, which we'll talk about in a separate video. So we're just going to focus on Martin versus Harutyunyan. So going into this fight, I really didn't know what to expect from the opponent because I hadn't been able to see a lot of film on him. So there was nothing to really indicate exactly what type of style he might bring to the ring, or if there might be something that he adjusted from his typical style and brought it in, similar to what you saw with Karen Chukajan versus Boots Ennis in their fight. He switched his game plan when he fought Boots because he was thinking survival. So we didn't know what we were going to get from Harutyunyan, and he came in a very game opponent. He's an undefeated fighter. Something I misspoke in the previous video. I think I said he was 14-2. He actually was 12-0. So he's an undefeated fighter. And when a guy's coming in with their they're going to be a tough out. And he proved to be that. He was aggressive. He provided pressure early on. And up until around the third round, I thought that the fight was kind of going back and forth. In fact, I believe I had it 2-1 Artem going into the fourth round because I gave Frank the first and I think Artem the next two. And then I gave Frank the fourth. So at one point, my card had it 2-2. And you could check that on Twitter. I called this pretty much straight. Now, at that point, I kind of felt like some things were shifting, even during the replays and during the rounds. I started to see Frank deflect more punches and start to kind of take control in his own way, even though Artem was coming forward and he was the busier fighter. The accuracy of Frank Martin would show. He would let 2 or 3 punches go and all would land, and Artem would throw 4 punches and land 1. So one guy's busier, but he's less accurate. And when you start to think about scoring criteria, and this is what I talk about when we get to these scorecards: clean, effective punching, defense, which is partially blocking, deflecting, catching punches and things like that, slipping punches, ring generalship. Are you controlling where the fight takes place as far as real estate? And then you also have to look at effective aggression. Effective being the key word. Just moving forward isn't always effective. You could be moving forward eating shots. And I felt like that's what was happening throughout the fight. Now, I was okay with scorecards at one point. If somebody had a 7-5 Harutyunyan, I guess that would have been okay, even though he eventually took a knee in one of the later rounds. So just not to skip ahead. So we're at the fourth round, and I start to see Frank start to do some things. And over the next few rounds, while I thought he won the majority of them, like 3 out of the next 4, it was well within reason that somebody would swing it the other way. When you look at round 6 and 7, 6, Frank had him in a lot of trouble. In 7, I think he tried to capitalize on the momentum of that round, but Harutyunyan had recovered and he was game. So I thought that could have been a swing round in the 7, but 6 was definitely for Frank. So even early on, you had to give Frank at least 2 rounds. I would say 4 and 6, or you could have given him 3 and 6. 6 was clear. 3 and 4 were both super competitive. That could have gone either way. So if you split it, 1 to Artem, 1 to Frank, I think it's a fair wash. You get down the stretch into the later part of the fight, and now you're in rounds 9 through 12, and I thought 9 was super competitive, and you could have put it on either guy if you wanted to, but 10 through 12 were absolutely Frank Martin rounds, including Artem being in real trouble. And in some instances, you could say it was really the smart strategy versus getting knocked down and taking unnecessary damage. He bought himself time to recover by taking the knee and getting a standing 8 count. So in that regard, it was the right thing to do for survival, but it definitely affected one card. One judge had it, I think it was Weisfeld. He had it 114, 113. That knee is the difference. So that's a draw on that card. The other 2 cards had it 115, 112. So they had the 7-5 Frank. For me, I think I had it 8-4, but 7-5 is probably what it actually was. It just depends on which rounds you swung which way. I thought there were 5 clear Frank Martin rounds, including either 3 or 4, if you want to give them either one. Round 6 and then 10 through 12. So in the rest of those very competitive and close rounds, you really just had to find 2 that you might have felt that Frank Martin won, and that would have given him the win. Now, even if you didn't give him the 2 and you just picked 1, that's a draw. And I think a draw would have been a fair outcome. I thought it wasn't the most even performance. And one thing I want to say before I close, it sounded like to me, Derek James gave him a strategy that wasn't effective early. And this is something I talked about in the previous video. Is it being too much? Like he mixing up his game plans, but it sounded like he was telling Frank to kind of chill and just counterpunch. But against this particular fighter, anytime pressure was applied, he kind of folded up. So when I saw Frank get on the front foot and go forward, I'm like, you know what? Maybe he needs to just stick to that. But one thing to throw in there, maybe Artem's power was kind of sneaky strong, and it made Frank hesitant early because it took him a while to get comfortable enough to apply consistent pressure. And then in the last 3 rounds, he just got on his ass and was trying to get him up out of there when Derek James said, go get him. So I don't know, man. It was a up and down performance in my opinion, but it wasn't horrible. It just, I think styles make fights, and this particular opponent came in very game and very competitive. And I thought it was a good learning lesson for Frank Martin, a good springboard. So all those people saying he's not ready for the best, we don't know how he'll look against the rest. Because if you put him in there with, let's say, Gervonta Davis, they pretty much got the same style, kind of wanting to sit back and counterpunch. So it might be a boring ass fight. We don't know, but we can't assume that Tank is just going to go in there and wash him simply because he didn't look good against a particular very aggressive fighter. Artem fights nothing like Devin Haney, nothing like Shakur Stevenson, nothing like Tank Davis. So we don't know what that looks like against those guys. But anyway, we'd love to get you guys' thoughts. This has been T for the Mic Check Podcast. Until next time, I'm out. Peace.